Hello, everybody. Hello, 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 hello. So, we are here, and I have decided to have a discussion video about who the real Santa Claus is because we have a lot of fiction going on out there, okay? We have a lot of fictional information about who Santa Claus is, what Santa Claus is about, and everything like that, okay? So, I wanted to give you guys the real truth of who Santa Claus really is. Okay, so let's first look at the fictitious Santa Claus, this magical being who flies around the world and delivers presents to all the good boys and girls, who has flying reindeer, a flying sleigh, who is a magical fiction being. Okay, that is the fictitious Santa Claus. Okay, now here is some real information. Let me okay, so here is some real information about who the real Santa Claus is. So the first thing that needs to be established is Santa Claus, or the idea of Santa Claus, was based on a real person. It wasn't based on, like, it's not like the story of Frosty the Snowman, where it's just a made up story that someone decided to create. Then author decided to write, like a made up story. Let's make some feel good story. Okay. It's not like that. Rudolph is like that, and Frosty the Snowman is like that. Okay. Those two are fictitious. There's no way a snowman is actually real. There's no way there's a Rudolph a reindeer that actually has red nose that shines like a light and that flies. Okay, so you have to have some common sense with some of this stuff. Okay, Rudolph, false. Frosty the Snowman, false. Is it a good feel-good story for Christmas? Yes, of course. You know, the whole story of Rudolph being some oddball or some weirdo or mischief type, not mischief, but misfit, like the oddball out, the one that doesn't fit in the group. Because that's his story, is Rudolph was the reindeer that didn't match everybody else. Okay, so is it a feel good story? Absolutely. Is it based on truth? No, not even a little bit. Frosty the Snowman, a snowman that gets this magician's hat, which by the way, magician in the Bible is connected to sorcery, so that gives a sign right there. Okay, and this hat gets put on the Frosty, and he becomes alive. That doesn't happen. Okay, so let's look at who the real Santa Claus is and the correct information about Santa Claus. Okay, so Santa Claus is a legendary figure in the traditional idea of Christmas. Right? He's a legendary, he's some magical creature person that they say creature person because he's this fictitious figure or person that has magical powers that go outside of human reality. Okay. And it is in the United States and many other countries, and it's bringing gifts. Now, a lot of the details you're going to find out is rooted in truth. So, how would I say this to you? Many of the myths, right, in this world, just as we found out with Halloween, are based in some sort of truthful statement of the past. We found out that the jack-o'-lanterns that in Halloween that were placed for a purpose because it was placed as people's fears to ward off this jack spirit. Okay? So let's look at the Christmas one. His image is based on the traditions associated with Saint Nicholas. So, Santa Claus comes from the real person, and I don't like that my seat is squeaking, the real person of Saint Nicholas. Okay, Saint Nicholas is a real person. Saint Nicholas, by the way, was a 4th century, so let's look up when the 4th century is. Okay. Okay, so the 4th century is 301 AD. the area of 301 AD. So basically 301 years after Christ died. Okay. And it first appeared in the Julian calendar in the West in the Constantine the Great, who was the Roman emperor during that time. Okay, so the 4th century, so around 3 to 400 AD. Okay, so that's the first piece of information. So he was a real person. Saint Nicholas was a real person. He was a Christian saint. He never intended his image as a human being to be made into some idol. Okay, that was the world's doing. Okay, that was the sinful world's doing, to make him into something he wasn't. Okay, so what was he really? He was a Christian saint or believer, if you want to put it that way, who took it upon himself to spread good joy and goodwill to people. And yes, the passing of the gifts, as we're going to read, is one of the things. Okay, the Dutch people are credited for the legend of the Saint Nicholas. So the legend of this fictitious creature who has magical powers, okay, and the gifts that he gave was accurate, and it was given on what's called the feast day, which was December 6th, not December 25th, but December 6th, okay. And yes, gifts and sweets were given to children on this day, on the feast day, okay. The current picture of Saint Nicholas, right, is a picture of him with this old white beard, this red suit, this sack of toys and everything. That was created by a person who loves to draw a cartoon known as Thomas Nast in the 1863 age. Okay, he was the one that created that picture, and that's where we get our nowadays imagery of what Santa Claus looked like. Okay, and I will try to pull up a real picture. Let's see, Saint Nicholas. Nicholas. Okay. So I'll pull up a picture. I got the picture, but let's continue reading, and then I'll show you the picture later. Okay. So it was in 1863 that this image of this big, jolly, fat Santa Claus with this big white beard and go ho 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 ho, that was created in 1863. It wasn't created before that. Okay. And it was created during the 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, okay, theme, which which was published in 1823, just something like 40 years before that. The image was defined or created popular by the Santa Claus advertisements by the Coca-Cola company. Okay, if you've ever watched the Coca-Cola, let me switch the camera on so you can see. Okay, you might have seen this imagery where you have Santa Claus, some big fluffy white-faced Santa Claus, and he's got Coca-Cola. They used it to sell Coca-Cola. Okay, so it was used as a selling mechanism. Okay, and that was created in 1931, that imagery, okay, by a guy named Hadan Sundblom, okay. So Sundblom's Santa was a white-bearded gentleman dressed in red suit with a black belt, white. So the image of Santa Claus that we have today all comes from this area in the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, okay. Santa Claus is said to live in the North Pole with his wife, which is not true, obviously. Nobody lives in the North Pole, okay? And he spends his year making toys and helping his elves, which elves are not real, okay? At least not in that way. And they receive letters from children all over. And then on Christmas Eve, he loads up his sleigh and flies all over the world, drawn by 8 reindeer, which is, the reindeers is where they came up with the idea for Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, okay? And he slides down chimneys and leaves gifts and eats milk and cookies, okay? Uh, and my computer wants to glitch on me. Okay. Okay, so that's pretty much the end of that of that particular. Hey, stop it, dude. Okay. Now we're getting into more of it. So his other names he has is Father Christmas. Okay, that they gave him. Saint Nicholas. That's his actual name. He wasn't actually known as Saint Nicholas, as in that's his first name, Saint. No, Nicholas was his first name. Okay, Saint was given to him because he's a Christian. He wanted to do what God said, which was to love other people. Saint Nick, Kris Kringle, or Santa. Okay, and so what I'm reading right now is from Wikipedia, which is a site. Okay, it's folklore. Okay, and Santa is generally depicted as this bearded white person with all these things. He goes around ho 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 ho. The image was created in the 1900s. So who was Saint Nicholas the person? Saint Nicholas the person was a 4th century Greek from Greece, right? So a person from the area of Greece, who was a Christian bishop, right? He was a bishop of the 4th century, and he was a bishop of Myra. Myra was a Lycian, known as ancient Greek Roman, okay, from Lycia, the same areas that the people in the Bible traveled, Lycia, okay. And it was known as today as Turkey. Okay, that's the general area where Saint Nicholas came from. Okay, Nicholas was known for his generosity, generous gifts to the poor. Okay, particularly three impoverished, people that are in poverty, daughters. So 3 daughters of a pious Christian, with dowries, payment, so that they would not have become prostitutes. So he wanted goodness. He was very religious, okay, from an early age, and devoted his life entirely to Christianity. So the general idea is this guy was a Christian man who wanted to follow the Bible, to do goodwill, to give to the poor, to be very generous, to follow the ways of God, okay, of Christianity, and they turned his story into some sort of fictitious, magical, ungodly idol type of thing, okay? And we all have fallen to that. When I was a kid, I believed in Santa Claus. So you get the idea. This is the delusions of the world, to create things that are real and then turn it into something that's not real. Okay. And he was in the early age and devoted his life entirely to Christianity in the continent of Europe, more precisely in the Netherlands, Belgium, Austria, and the Czech Republic, and Germany. Okay. He's usually portrayed as a bearded bishop. So they have a picture on the side. So this is a 13th century depiction of St. Nicholas. Okay. This is a 13th century depiction of St. Nicholas. As you see, crosses, carrying a Bible, doing goodwill, an old man with a beard, yes, okay, but hardly some sort of picture of some jolly white man, okay? But you see, the beard is accurate, right? The rosy cheeks are accurate, but he was just an old man, okay? So this is the depiction of Saint Nicholas from a painting. They didn't have pictures back then, but this is a 13th century. So 13th century would be in the 200 to 300s or so, roughly, right around the same time, okay? And he was Saint Catherine's Monastery created this picture of him, okay? So that is a drawing or a painting of Saint Nicholas as he would actually be, okay? And so This was in, so continuing on, in 1087, while the Greek Christians inhabited Myra, they were subjected by the Muslim dynasty, okay? And after the Greek Orthodox Church had been declared, okay, to be in schism, which schism is known as the ongoing break of communion. So when the Roman Catholic and the East Orthodox separated, basically, okay, is the schism, the separation, in other words, by the Catholic Church in 1054. Okay, a group of merchants from the Italian city of Bari. Okay, Bari is in the metropolitan area, and it's in the Adriatic Sea in the southern Italy part. Okay, and they removed the major bones of Nicholas's skeleton from his sarcophagus where he was buried. Okay, and in the Greek church of Myra, over the objection of the monks of Myra, the sailors took the bones of Saint Nicholas to Bari, where they now enshrine, where they are now enshrined or encased in the Basilica di San Nicola, which is a huge building in the southern part of Italy. Okay, southern part of Italy. Okay, and it is known as the Pontifical Basilica of St. Nicholas, okay, and it's an actual place, okay. Sellers from this collected just half of Nicholas's skeleton, leaving all the minor fragments in the church sarcophagus. They were later taken by sellers during the First Crusade and placed in Venice, where a church to St. Nicholas, the patron of sailors, was built on the San Niccolò al Lido, okay, which is refers to both the San Niccolò Church and refers to a monastery. It is in the northern part of Italy. And it's Catholic by nature, okay. And Saint Nicholas's sarcophagus can still be seen in the Saint Nicholas Church in Myra, okay. This tradition was confirmed to be important scientific investigation of the relics at Bari in Venice, okay, which revealed the relics of two Italian cities that belonged to the same skeleton, okay. St. Nicholas was later established as a patron saint, okay. So they later gave him the name of saint, okay, as a way of honoring him and respecting him. He was a patron saint of both Amsterdam and Moscow, okay. During the Middle Ages, okay, often on the evening before the name day of December 3rd, so, I mean, December 6th, so this would have been December 5th. On the evening of December 5th, children were gifted with his honor. He was giving gifts to the children. The date was earlier than the original day of gifts of the children, which moved in the course of Reformation and was later contributed as the 24th and 25th of December by the saints. So the saints were the ones that moved it to the 24th and 25th, when originally it was on the 6th of December, or somewhere around there, okay? The custom, or the practice, of giving gifts to children at Christmas was later reestablished by Martin Luther. And I believe this would be Martin Luther King. No, sorry. This Martin Luther was not Martin Luther King. This Martin Luther was a German priest, theologian, someone who believed in the Bible, okay, an author, a hymn writer, a professor, and a friar, like Friar Tuck, okay, as an alternative, and the custom was given as an alternative to the previously very popular gift custom by St. Nicholas. So they took this gift custom of St. Nicholas and they reformed it how they wanted and presented it to the children in the church. And it was to focus on the interest of the children, which is good, to do good for children, to do good for somebody else. Okay. Martin Luther, this guy, first suggested the Christ kind as the bringer of gifts. So it was this Christianing, this goodness given to kids, which is good. But Nicholas remained popular as gifts bearer for the people. Nicholas remained that, okay? Sorry. So the term Father Christmas dates back to the dates back to the 16th century of England during the reign of Henry VIII. Okay, when a picture of a large man in green and scarlet robe, which I will show you the picture, okay, this picture right here, okay, this picture right here, okay, that's the picture they're talking about, okay, okay, a large man, okay, in a scarlet robe lined with fur, and he typified the spirit of good cheer and goodwill at Christmas, which is where we get the idea of goodwill towards man, peace on earth, good joy, good food and wine. So wine and food and revelry, because in the picture you can see all sorts of little foods laid around. So little foods laid around, little foods you can see there, okay? And that's where they get the idea of Father Christmas. And the illustration of the ghost of Christmas present. It's where, so when they tell of Charles Dickens' Scrooge, right? And they do this ghost of Christmas present as a large, huge giant in a green robe. That's where they get it from, okay? And Charles Dickens in 1843 used that image to create this ghost of Christmas present, okay? As a great genial man in a green robe who took Scrooge through the streets of London to show him what Christmas was all about, okay? The Dutch, the Belgium, and the Swiss folklore created Santa Claus. Their Santa Claus competes with that of known as Sinterklaas. Sinterklaas, one word, Sinterklaas. Okay, and their image, Sinterklaas, and I'll show the picture, is this. Okay, so white robe, Catholic outfit, riding on a horse. This is the Netherlands and the Belgium's version of Santa Claus, Sinterklaas. Okay, Father Christmas, or known as Père Noël. You might have heard that. Père Noël in French, Father Christmas. For children in the Netherlands, Sinterklaas remains the gift giver in December, okay? And that is a common theme, where they give gifts in December, usually around December 25th, okay? Many of the population still does this. In Belgium, presents are offered exclusively to children on December 6th. So in Belgium, they still honor the December 6th, okay? And on Christmas Day, all ages may receive presents. So on Christmas Day, all age people will give, on Christmas Day, all will give. But the night before, only to children. So the night before, they only give gifts to the children, only to children. But on Christmas Day, that's when everybody will receive it, okay? St. Nicholas's assistants are called Pieten in Dutch, or Pierre Fontard, or if I'm saying it right, in French. So these are not elves. They are just assistance people, okay? And in French, they carry a twig broom to spank the naughty children with. So here is the Norse. This is where by the way, in 1886, they get a long-bearded Norse god, Odin. Okay, so this is the image they show with a long stick, beard, which is very similar to Santa Claus, okay? And it's probably where the Nordic god Odin came from. So let's look at this one. Prior to Christianization, or the Christian coming into the world, the Christianity spreading, right? The German peoples, including English, celebrated the midwinter event called Yule, or Yuli. Old English, Giola or Giuli, okay, which is where they get the word Yuletide, okay. With the Christianization of German Europe, traditions were spread of Yuletide, that's where Yuletide, Yule, okay, celebrations into modern Christmas, such as Wild Hunt, for example, led by the god Odin, which is a picture that you showed that it was a drawing picture, okay, bearing many names, Jolnir, Yule figure, a long beard, or Old Norse, okay. So this image of that they get Odin from originally came from the imagery of Santa Claus, okay, in different cultures, okay, and they just turned it into different other things, okay. The folklore maintains that the appearance of Santa Claus, or Father Christmas, whose day is the 25th of December, owes much to Odin, the old blue hooded cloak, which is the picture you've seen, okay, but it's very closely related. So Santa Claus is or Saint Nicholas is connected all over the country in different areas and in different ways, okay. Transformed into Father Christmas, then Santa Claus. So the idea that they think is that Odin is Santa Claus in this old age thing, okay. But Saint Nicholas was an actual person, okay. He was a bishop, okay, and was first pictured as a thick-bellied, so he was overweight a little bit, Dutch sailor with a pipe, in a green winter coat, not red. And there was a parody of it. And so later on it became a Christmas celebration of the area. So it got transformed and changed, okay, into this Christmas season and Christmas thing, okay. And much of the things opposed it. So at some point there was a Dutch culture which tried to twist Santa Claus into some sort of premarital sex god, and it was very opposed by Christmas, by the people who upheld Christmas, okay, and public displays of sexuality, okay, which is closely related to what's going on now, where at Christmas people will dress sometimes in all sorts of nasty and naughty outfits, but more likely on Halloween, okay. Then there was many stories, many books that were written, and those books is what changed Saint Nicholas into Santa Claus, into this being that has magical powers when he doesn't, okay. And that's why the show or the movie, The Santa Claus, right, it's false. It's not based on reality. It's just some fun enjoyment thing, okay. And so these books in the 1800s is what cultivated the twist of who St. Nicholas was, mainly into this chubby, heavy-set, jolly old guy with a huge belly that shook foot with a bowl full of jelly, okay? And the reindeer and the sleigh and all of that. That's when all of that came into the thing, okay? So the reindeer names, Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner, and Blitzen, right? Dunder and Blitzen came from the old Dutch words for thunder and lightning, okay? Which were later changed from a more German sounding of Donner and Blitzen, okay? By 1845, Kris Kringle was a common variant or a common version of Santa in many parts of the United States, okay? An article in 1853 described American Christmas customs to British readers, refers to children hanging up stockings So that was false. The stocking thing, that was not originally done by Saint Nicholas. So all that Saint Nicholas actually really did was be a Christian, believed in goodwill towards man and being good to people. He was Christian, so he cultivated the be a giving person, be a loving person, be a kind person, do good for other people. Okay, and he did give sweets and gifts to children. Okay, that was accurate. The rest of it, the rest of everything that we know about Santa Claus is fake and not real. It's made up. Okay, and it's all through the twisting of society over the years. Okay, um, uh, Pennsylvania gave him the Kris Kringle. New York, he was known as Saint Nicholas or Santa Claus. Okay, the author who wrote this in 1853 quoted many poems. Okay, as the years passed, Santa Claus evolved into a larger, heavy-set person. Okay, and so I'm going to show you the picture in 1881 that was by Thomas Nast. Okay, right here. This picture is where we get the nowadays version of Santa Claus. Bowl full of jelly, carrying tons of toys, a pipe in the hand, which they don't usually show, the long beard, and all of that stuff. Okay, and it's what helped create the nowadays image of Santa Claus. Okay, the story of Santa Claus living in the North Pole was obviously false. He did not live in the North Pole. He lived in this European area. Okay, and let's see if there's anything else I can give you about that. Okay, and the person in 1869 who wrote a story called Santa Claus and His Works, who wrote the Santa Claus home, was near the North Pole in the ice and snow. Okay, and the tale of Santa Claus being in the North Pole, 1870s. By 1870s, it was adopted. Okay. The idea of a wife for Santa Claus may have been the creation of American authors, beginning in the 1900s. Okay, where a poet known as Catherine Lee Bates wrote about a Mrs. Claus in a poem, "Goody Santa Claus on a Sleigh Ride. Is There a Santa Claus?" is the title of an editorial or a story by Francis Church in September 1897 edition of the New York Sun newspaper. Okay, and all these stories is what led to all of the misconceptions. Okay, when in reality, Saint Nicholas never actually had a real wife that we know of. It was never established that he actually had a wife. Okay, and if he did, nobody knew about it. Okay. By the 20th century, Santa Claus has become an immortal being, right? And like immortality and some sort of spiritual being, some sort of supernatural being, and he's associated with bringing. That's where we get all of this magical Santa Claus magician stuff from. Okay, the work of Santa Claus motivates a happy childhood among people who are human. Okay, and I don't know if you've been here the whole time, little mama, or not, but there was a lot of information that was given, so I don't know if you have been. And the reason he did this is because in that area of Europe there was a lot of poverty and a lot of misery. So this Saint Nicholas wanted to bring a lot of goodness to people, to lift people up, and that is in agreement with the Bible, which is let nothing come out of your mouth, as well as do no action, which is to harm people. Do actions and do words to do good for people. Oh, you lost. It's okay, no worries. You might have to rewatch a portion of it that you missed. Okay. Because there was a lot of information. But basically, the rough idea for you, little mama, since you missed it, is the only things that were real of Saint Nicholas or Santa Claus is Christian man doing good for people, as the Bible says, being a Christian, being a bishop, going to church, and the gift giving and the and giving snacks or candy, as it were. Those are the things that are accurate about Saint Nicholas. Everything else was wrong. Everything else was fiction. Okay, everything else that we know about Santa Claus was fiction, and there was some imagery. So the real Saint Nicholas is a thin old man with a white beard, thin, not heavy set, none of this stuff. And a lot of these pictures is where the image of who's the Santa Claus that people look at today is made into. So as we continue reading, Santa strives to find a way to bring joy into the lives of all children. That is accurate. Okay. That is accurate. The real Saint Nicholas actually did that. He wanted to bring joy to people, which is why he gave gifts, why he gave candy, why he did these things. Okay, for the good of mankind. Okay, and later on, society, namely the Coca-Cola company, used the image of Santa Claus, this big jolly guy, to help sell their Coca-Cola products. Okay. And now, anytime you see a Coca-Cola, most of the time, especially around wintertime, that is where they got it from. Okay. And they had so the image of Santa Claus as a benevolent or supernatural character, okay, is where the falsivity or the falseness came in. Okay. And it's done by the organization known as Salvation Army, where they have Santa Claus standing ringing a bell on the streets, volunteers dressing as Santa Claus, going to different things, different functions. Okay. In 1937, Charles Howard, who played Santa Claus in department stores and parades, established the Charles W. Howard Santa School, and is the oldest continuous running such school in the world. And my guess is it's to teach how to be a Santa Claus, I guess. In some images in the early 20th century, 1900s, Santa was depicted as making his toys by hand in a small workshop like craftsmen. And that may be true. The real Saint Nicholas may have actually created the toys that he gave away. We don't know. Okay. But giving the toys, that's an accurate statement. Eventually, the idea emerged that he had numerous elves responsible. So the elf part, fake. The Mrs. Santa, fake. The reindeer, fake. The sleigh, fake. Going down the chimney, fake. And all of that, okay? And all of these different stories and novels turned him into some supernatural being, which he's not, okay? And it goes on and on of like all the different examples and things. Whereas now Santa Claus is some red fictitious outfit person. So here's the part about the chimney. Here's the traditions. The chimneys. The tradition of Santa Claus being said to enter dwellings through chimney is shared by many European seasonal gift givers. Okay. In pre-Christian Norse, that would be Norse like Norse gods, like Norse gods where we get Odin and Loki and all that stuff from tradition. Odin, right? Odin, okay, the Norse god Odin, the father, would often enter through chimneys and fire holes in a household. Okay, so that's where they get the chimney, the idea of the chimney of Santa Claus coming down the chimney from. Okay. And the gift giving, which is perpetually covered with soot, okay, from her trips. This would be a woman. The Italian Befani tradition. So the Italian Befani tradition is a witch. Keyword there, witch. A witch tradition. Witch, ungodly witch. Okay, which came down chimneys. Okay. In the United States and Canada, children may leave a glass of milk and plate of cookies intended for Santa. Okay. In Britain and Australia, sherry, which is not like wine, or beer, and pies are left instead. In Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, it is common for children to leave him rice porridge and sugar and cinnamon. Okay. In Ireland, they leave milk along with Christmas pudding or mince pies. Okay. Yes, you have it. I see your number one, but sometimes your little thing doesn't pop up. So all over the world, they would leave different foods. Okay. St. Nicholas would bring small gifts to good children on the eve of December 6th, which is originally where it's at. Christians is what moved it to December 25th. Okay. And then Godfather Frost, which is where they get the idea of Jack Frost from, a person by the name of Didic Mraz, brings gifts on the eve of the 31st, December 31st. So New Year's Eve, right? After the children have fallen asleep, parents play the role of Santa Claus and leave gifts under the Christmas tree, which may be signed as being from Santa Claus. Okay. Then they go into the appearance of him, which we've discussed how that's changed over the years, and things like that. His workshop and all of that, they're going over that, which is wrong. And I will give this link all about this for you guys. I will link this to the group so you guys can see this. Okay. This is the Wikipedia all about Santa Claus and who the real Santa Claus actually was, and where all the little traditions and stuff come from for people to read. Okay. And so let's see. Santa Claus has most of his roots in St. Nicholas, okay, which is a Christian, partially in the high church denominations, Catholic for one. He is known as a saint, okay, and the rest of the world is what twisted it to become this Santa Claus, okay. Many Christians, however, have decided to reject the idea of Santa Claus. Oh, you sent it now. Very good. Thank you. Okay. Well, I'm talking about the link about where I'm reading this from. That is what I'm going to do. Okay. Anyway, many Christians have rejected this idea of Santa Claus, and many Christians today still do. They reject the idea of Santa Claus, which is why they more go towards Christmas being celebration of Christ versus Santa Claus. So many Christians today want to demean or remove this fake idea of what Christmas is all about. Okay. And thank you for giving the video link about this. And so they get rid of all this stuff of what this is. Okay. And many, such as Jewish culture, for example, they won't even celebrate Christmas. It's not even allowed. It's a no-no for them. Okay. Following the restoration of the monastery from England, the ban on Christmas, there was a ban where Christmas wasn't allowed, and was satirized as works such as Josiah King, okay, and many other things. Okay. Reverend Paul, a clergyman in Denmark, okay, attracted controversy in 1957 when he declared Santa to be a heathen goblin. Okay, so he was basically saying, hey, Christmas has become some ungodly thing. Okay, and many other, but you'll see lots of other reading. It's way too much for me to read all in one video unless I just spend. So anyway, babies and toddlers do not understand this concept of fiction. They don't, kids really don't understand that around the age of 3 or 4. So this is why they used the idea of this Santa Claus, okay, to project this to kids. But here's what you're really doing. When you give to children the idea of Santa Claus, you are giving them lies. You are giving them deceivement, okay, because it's something that is not true. This is why it's better to directly let the kids see you giving gifts on Christmas. Let them see you wrapping the gifts. Maybe you won't necessarily want to see that, but don't write from Santa Claus. Write from mom, from dad, from grandma, from this, from that. and explain to them as much as you can the real story of Santa Claus. That Santa Claus is Saint Nicholas, a Christian man. And maybe they might not understand the particulars at that early age, but you can say from Saint Nicholas, for example. But the gift, you don't want to do that either, because if the gift is from you, you don't want to say it's from Saint Nicholas. But share them the story of Saint Nicholas, who Saint Nicholas actually was. Okay. As they grow older, that's when you can start elaborating and telling them the truth of this Saint Nicholas. So I fall into this guiltiness. Many years, I have allowed my kids to believe in this Santa Claus thing, and without realizing, have deceived them. I've lied to them, because deceiving is lying. Okay, and this is why I say there are sins that you know, that you're aware of. Then there are sins that you are not aware of. Okay, and this is a sin that I was not aware of that I was doing. That I was giving falsehood. So, as a way to understand, anytime you give falsehood, you're giving lies. You're giving deceivement. Okay, even if it's done for a good purpose, such as this feel-good idea for kids of this magical, enlightening, oh, Christmas is so wonderful, special, magical stuff, right? Even if you're doing that, you're still giving lies to children. Okay. You don't want to give lies to children. So don't let them be misled to believe that Christmas is anything other than the goodwill of mankind trying to follow the will of God to do good for other people and do kindness for other people. Okay? So that's the general idea of this. So let's backtrack and just recap real quick. Santa Claus, a real person by the name of Saint Nicholas. Okay? A Christian man, a bishop, a church person, okay, who wanted to do goodwill for children, goodwill for people, and decided because of that he's going to give gifts, okay, whether he created them or not, I don't know, and who wanted to give candy or food, right, to the poor and do good for the poor, which is where the idea of giving gifts and food, which is why now we have a big feast, right, on Christmas to eat a bunch of food and have lots of candy and eat a bunch of food, right, and get lots of gifts, okay? But you see the difference here, okay? Santa Claus originally, do good for others, give to others, give this to people, do good for people, give, selfless, right? Whereas now, Christmas is self-centered. What can I get? What can I have? It's all about me. See, that's the world for you. It twists it into a self-centered. So be careful, if anything in your life, that the world will try and twist it into a self-centered view. Okay? Because God's view is selfless. Do good for other people, care for other people, others, others, others. Whereas the world's view is self, self, self. Who is the biggest God in this world right now? Self. Just being honest. Okay? So, be blessed. Thank you guys for your time. I will be dropping this stuff into the group chat for other people to look at this site themselves and read all of this stuff. There's a lot of information here, okay? As well as where all the different cultures named Santa Claus. So thank you guys for your time, and take care.